and welcome to another Behind the Scenes with I, your host and Dungeon Master, Cranio Dad. So, we didn't have a game last week because I'm sure many of you, wherever you live, are very used to the awesomeness of this time of year where our weather decides to go from 12 degrees to 40 degrees back down to 5 degrees, and everyone gets sick, and then there's a bug going around. So we had some illnesses that were plaguing our group, as well as a few people who had a couple scheduling conflicts. So we decided best just to call it off. I am looking forward to eventually being able to test what happens when we have a player who wants to call it in. So maybe one day we'll get there. And I see that probably happening at some point in the near future. But we just decided it best to not even attempt with the one or two people who could have been here, because it really would have taken away from a lot of the game. So, really fast, can I get an audio check from the folks in chat? How do I sound? It must be fantastic. That or else there's a longer than normal delay. Awesome. I sound goid. Tonight I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the planning that I've been doing in preparation for this week's game, to continue the idea of letting you guys see what it means to be a DM to a group that's running through Horde of the Dragon Queen, and also spend a little bit of time talking about some of the things I'm working on the side and some of the things I have planned for this channel. So this is a chance for you to not only just ask me questions, but to hear a lot of the things pretty much first. That's kind of why I like doing this. It's a little one-off thing where you guys have a chance to talk with me, ask me questions. Even the players are able to ask me questions. I just won't give them answers, and I'm not going to give them any spoilers. So sorry about that, guys. But it's also a chance to hear things that we're trying to do long before they'll ever even be remotely announced. So let me talk about some of the planning that I've had to do in the last week or so in preparation for this game. So when a game gets canceled, it is not necessarily the best thing in the world. Especially as a DM, because a lot of time and effort goes into planning and prep. And my players know that. That's why they let me know as soon as they can that they can't make it. And we, as a group, understand fairly well that life happens. I think that within my group, between all of us, we have 5, 9, 10, 11 kids. So somebody's inevitably going to get sick. All of us are married, so we all have spouses, and that just adds to the compendium of people who could possibly not feel well or have a rough day and just need that time at home. And life happens, and we kind of roll with the punches as best we can. But when a session is canceled, what that tells me I need to do is to figure out how to keep the story moving along, because as I talked about in the first behind the scenes and a little bit in the last behind the scenes, there is a lot of guesswork that comes into figuring out how far along you're actually going to get your players each week, kind of setting in the idea, the gold standard of time. And hey, Calcimac, welcome to chat. So when a session gets canceled, you have to then consider, how can you keep the story alive? How can you bring the players back into it? What do you have to do as a DM? Because my running mantra for, as I'm running through this version of Horde of the Dragon Queen, is kind of the adage of what a DM is. There is the adage that as a dungeon master, you are the player's god's god, which I always find a little endearing. However, there's also the idea that at this table, I am nothing more than the narrator to the story that the players are eventually going to tell. So with that mindset, I want to make sure that I can keep the players engaged. When you have 2 weeks in between when you play, there's a lot of stuff that people tend to forget, so it means my recap's got to be a little bit longer, or dive a little bit deeper, or pull from parts I wasn't necessarily wanting to pull from. In the advent of the technological age that we live in, it would be outstanding if the players would be able to watch the episode that we last posted prior to playing, but I can't bank on that. I mean, that's a 4-hour time investment, even if it's just audio, for them to listen to kind of remember where they are. And that's a lot to ask. So my job as the narrator at this table is to kind of recap the last few chapters and verse of what we've been through. So I've been toying with how my introduction is going to go. I normally don't write a lot down. I'm a very extemporaneous speaker. I have very little notes for tonight. In fact, my only notes are two things, and it's what we're talking about now and what we will talk about, and it's just the subject. So I kind of want to read the room and figure out what do the players need to hear, where are they engaging, where's the audience engaging, what am I seeing in chat. That will hone me in a little bit more on what I need to say, and then take it a little bit further and make sure that we're all on the same starting page. Because unfortunately, with the way that Horde of the Dragon Queen is written, the entire first chapter takes place in less than a day. As a matter of fact, it takes place in a few hours. So it makes it very exhausting for the players mentally at the table, as well as the players that are in the campaign itself. And having to constantly remind them of something that happened, it seemed just a little bit as ago, it happened less than an hour ago, but in reality, that was 2 weeks ago. That's a lot. So right now, I'm going to have to do things like remind them that they're not in a very good place healthfully, that they just brought back some prisoners, that they need to interrogate the prisoners. And there's still a few other things to deal with before we'll actually leave Greenest and move on throughout the campaign. And my honest desire is that we'll be able to do that this week. I don't think it'll be pushing the players too much based on what I've seen from the first couple of episodes and what I think they're capable of, to kind of be a little bit more cinematic in a couple sections and just let nature take its course, as well as to finalize the minor railroading that might need to happen to keep them on track. I don't like railroading the players, but it happens, and it happens fairly infrequently for most DMs. I think there's a few times that railroading is just a thing that we have to do to drive the story along. But I try to keep that at a minimum, because the idea of Horde of the Dragon Queen is that it's a giant burning sandbox and it's on fire with a bunch of gasoline and kerosene. And as a DM, we have to guide the characters through it the best that we can. Meanwhile, they're looking at, oh, look, shiny flame. Let's go after that. So I'm looking forward to those nightmares that will eventually and inevitably come. But that's some of the prep work. I mean, the maps are already set. I've had them set for a while. I've had to make a little, couple tweaks here and there based on some of the things that they have done and some of the things that they have missed, to give them another shot at something that they may or may not have missed, item-wise or storytelling-wise, or hook-wise, because I want to make sure that before the players leave Greenest that they understand what's going on. I should make Tiamat a level 2. No, that's not happening. Sorry. You guys, I don't even think you really engage that much with Tiamat until much later on anyway. But that all aside, it's an opportunity for me to make sure that all the hooks are in place to let the characters understand the weight of what is going on. And you'll hear me express this a lot. It's going to be a lot of repetition for the first few chapters of this book, that the decisions and the actions that the players are taking are world-changing events. And that's really brought to light by the Wednesday night group that Gidgewitch runs on Twitch as well, that I'm happy to be a player of, where we're doing Waterdeep Dragon Heist. And we realize that Waterdeep Dragon Heist takes place just a few years after Horde of the Dragon Queen, and there's an event that our players are getting ready to go to in something like 4 days of game time. So it could be 6 months at some of the rates that we sometimes play, but we are getting ready to go to an opera that is about everything that we're doing now. And I like that idea, Gidgewitch, about adding a kobold named Meepo to our party. I think that we might need to reach out to Castlemak for his blessing on that one. I love it. I think it just starts to tie the world even more together. But when it comes to making sure that events happen, it's understanding that these players they have a likelihood of dying at every step of the way. The deck is stacked against them a lot of different ways. And I'm going to continue to not nerf it. I mean, I want to see what the players come up with the situations they're getting ready to face. So, the maps are ready. My notes are ready. I've made a couple little tweaks here and there. I'm currently just walking through the retelling of what has happened to remind the players of where they're at and what's going on. And with that, I should be able to dive pretty much head first into the game, and I hope the players can too. I think there is currently conversation about the session on Friday running a little bit late to make up for the fact that we didn't play and to allow us some more time to do some things. So if you are a watcher, be prepared for that to happen. I leave that completely up to the players. I mean, they come to my house and they are here at my table, and when everything is said and done, I lock a couple doors, turn out a few lights, and I head upstairs. They, meanwhile, have to drive home. They have to decompress from the game and, get to bed. And then we wake up, and that's one of the reasons we love playing on Saturdays, is because the next day is Sunday. So it's up to the players when we start and when we end. I leave it open for that reason, because they are, I'm hosting. They are guests, but that doesn't mean that I have the ability to say we're going to always end at this time. In fact, we originally developed this to have a little bit of flexibility that we routinely are running up against. We said that we wanted to run the game from about 8 p.m. until about 10 p.m. and we'd have the window to play until 11, but we're consistently playing until about 10:30 or so. Yes, we do play on Friday nights, though. Yes, we play on Fridays, and you guys play Gidgewitch on Wednesdays. So I play on Fridays and Wednesdays. That's just how my life is. But I do want to say that it has been a really rough week, having a week full of childlike hope and ambition, getting ready for 2 fantastic nights of Dungeons and Dragons that just completely fell through because people were sick. But being the healthy one on that side of that gives me that perch to stand on and say I see this. I don't. Again, there's no issue with people being sick. That just happens. But it's just one of those things that it happens, and we roll with it. So that's kind of where we are right now for Horde of the Dragon Queen. We are still in Greenest. It is still on fire. It is still being attacked by a dragon and a giant raiding party that are there for some purpose. But our players finally have some prisoners that they may or may not be interrogating. There is a few other events that will take place. And then we will finally be able to leave Greenest and start going down the hunt for Tiamat, as it may be. So, some of the projects and stuff that I have working on now. I mentioned this last behind the screen with the race to 100 that you see down below you, which I now have set to reflect the 17 current followers that we have. And what I'm doing is, once we get to 100, everybody who is a follower is going to be entered into a drawing. I've already figured out the prize. It's going to be the really awesome brand new box set with the alternative cover designs for the 3 core books. That's the Player's Handbook, the DM's Guide, and the Monster's Manual. It's an amazing set. I'm looking forward to picking one up for myself. If this is the first time you're hearing this, my wife, I'm sorry, but I will be buying one for myself at some point. So that's something that I want to do for the people who have invested time to at least follow. I'm not worried about subscribers or anything at that point just yet. We'll get there when we get there. We got a long road to go before we get there. But that's something I want to do for the people who are following us. So what will happen is we'll announce it well in advance. We'll talk about it a couple weeks ahead of time. I'll talk about it here on Mondays. We'll talk about it on Fridays. I might even convince Gidgewitch through a whole bunch of bribes. I don't know what they'll be. Probably cookies. To talk about it on Wednesdays. But we'll have an event one Friday night where we actually will do a raffle. And so if you're a follower and you enter, you could win this box set, and we will ship it to your door. And it's just my way of saying thanks for following along. So like I said, we got a long ways to go to get there, but you're hearing it here first. That's going to be the prize. So the closer we get there, the sooner we'll be able to do that. I have ideas for things much further down the line because unfortunately I make a pretty poor habit of thinking about 5 steps ahead of where I currently am working through, and then adjusting as I move along. And yeah, Castle Mac, those books are the most beautiful thing ever. If I had my own copy, I would show you. But you can just look for it. And maybe next Harlequin's review, I'll be able to show you guys something. Not an actual copy of the book. My wife would not be allowing that right now. So, all that aside, that's kind of the big thing that I'm wanting to work towards for the followers, is that giveaway. And, it doesn't cost you anything to follow. It doesn't cost you anything to do anything with us like that, but it's just a chance to say thank you for that. And it's a really nice set, and it's one of those things that even if you're not a person who plays D&D, you might really appreciate the artwork. I mean, the covers alone are gorgeous. The box set is just beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. But I have other things that I'm working on with some of the things I've done in my former life. I was a blogger, still kind of am, but not really. So I've been able to build a lot of social media contacts that I've kind of feathered out there for a while. The idea of having this Dungeons and Dragons group, and a lot of them I've piqued their interest, and they've thrown some numbers at me, and I've thrown some things back. But once we get some steam behind us, there's going to be some pretty cool things that I might be able to bring to the table. A lot of it's going to be Dungeons and Dragons based, because I don't think that market's very saturated. But it's going to be things like dice giveaways, books giveaway, mini giveaways, things along those lines that we'll do, fairly regularly. As long as the supply can keep coming in and the engagement is there, we will probably be able to continue doing that. But I also had a conversation with the players after our last game 2 weeks ago. Just again, forward thinking, what happens when we reach the point that we actually are able to get subscribers. And they all felt a very particular way about what we should do with the funds we receive. And I'm not very happy with that because it involves repaying for my setup. And I'm not really worried about that. So we're still going to work through that. My intent is eventually to make it to where we pick something every month or every quarter, and either a portion, if not all of our subscription money, because we do this for fun. We're not, that's what we do. But either a portion or all of our money will go towards something. For example, the moniker Cranio Dad, right? My daughter has this thing called craniosynostosis. I could talk to you about that for 5, 10, 12 hours at length, but it's a medical condition that requires her to have quite a few surgeries. And so we've grown very fond of the Children's Hospital here in Richmond, Virginia, that's attached to VCU Health. And that's one of those things that I would love to throw money at them, to throw gifts at the kids. I've mentioned to my wife that one of the things I would love to do is to get a whole bunch of the starter sets, which are usually incredibly cheap for what all it contains, and drop them off for the kids in the PICU, because it's not just a bunch of little kids like my daughter, but there are older kids there. It's up to the age of 18, just to give them something to do while they're in there. And yeah, Castle Mac, I watched the Extra Life thing that you guys did. That thing was amazing. It blew my mind, and it's kind of on the heels of that, where my idea of wanting to just constantly give back to the community. So there may be some bigger things that we do for larger international organizations, but I like keeping it local. I mean, one of the things that I'm really happy with is being connected with a pretty diverse community here within Richmond. So that's a conversation that the players and I will continue to have. We're a long ways away from being in a place to do anything like that, but it's just one of those things that we've talked about as a bigger idea for how to show how awesome the Dungeons and Dragons community actually is. If you watch anything for any length of time on Twitch, any of the streamers that are doing this, you always see giving, not just giving things back to the community, but reinvesting in the community, giving things to different networks or things along those lines as donations. And I think it says a lot about the heart that the community of tabletop RPG actually has. It really doesn't seem like I can go a week without hearing something about something that somebody is doing, and it's just one of those ways that I really want to be part of that, to continue to raise the voice of fundraising or helping out those who need it the most. I mean, many of us find ourselves in a position to do so, and this is the platform that I've chosen to dive into for a very long time. So I'm going to make the best of it. I mean, I had goals and ambitions with my blog that never came to fruition because I started caring too much about what my readers were hearing versus what I was trying to say. Here at Dungeons and Dragons for Harlequin's Requital, that's not really how we roll, figuratively and literally. It's very much, it's us. This is us at the table. We're having fun, and if you like it, awesome. If not, okay. But that's kind of like the big fundraising idea. That's kind of the big, what are we going to do when we reach this certain point thing? Because I want to make sure that we have these conversations now as we grow and as our reach expands. So that way, when the time does come, it's not even okay, guys, let's have a group meeting. Let's sit down for 3 hours and figure out what we're going to do. Because if we get 3 more subscribers, this is where we're going to be at. If we get 1 more follower, this is what that means. So there's a lot of oh, excuse me, a lot of admin work that goes on behind the scenes. I know that there's a lot of us that deal with that a lot. Spend it all on Twizzlers. That's a good call. I mean, Castleback, you got to do what you got to do. Um, but I don't want to find ourselves in a situation to where we even have a single subscriber and we don't know what we're doing with that subscription. Because to me, even if you're using your Amazon Prime subscription, which is free, then it's one of those times that you're investing something in us, and I want to make sure that we're giving that back. So that went on a little bit longer than I had intended, but that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the forward thinking, Michael. We got some giveaways. I got a thing to do for 100 followers. I've got some contacts that I'm working for some other giveaways down the line once we can have subscribers and or we have more followers. I do want to quickly pitch the fact that I think Castle Mac. How close are you guys to your 1,000 follower goal? Last time I checked, I think it was 12. But Castle Mac has got a huge giveaway once they reach 1,000 followers. So after you get done watching me, which they need 7, they only need 7 followers. So if you do not already follow Castle Mac, if once you get done watching me, check out Castle Mac's channel. In fact, if they are still broadcasting, and I apologize for over broadcasting during your channel, but if they are still broadcasting, I might even launch a raid. Quickly just follow them because the giveaway they have is incredible. And they're RVA, so we got to keep it local. And I really like watching them play. They're a really good group. So all that aside, let's talk about some of the other things that I have going on. For some time now, I've been working with a few other DMs throughout the world. And I have been trying to build a very interesting campaign. I pitched an idea to a few of the DMs that I have been chatting with in different groups and things along those lines, and we kind of built this little consortium. But life kind of seems to have gotten in the way. We were making some decent headway, and I didn't have it. My wife had our 4th child, but that had a resounding effect on our home. But in the last 30 or 45 days, life has really impacted the other 3 DMs that I was working with. We were going to take a central theme, and we were going to write a bunch of little mini dungeons and then start knitting them together to make one giant epic campaign based on a character that I pitched to a few of them as the big bad evil girl. I don't want to talk too much about what has affected their lives, but basically they are out of the project for the foreseeable future just because of life events. It's not out of lacking desire to do this. It's that things have come up that really just are not going to afford them the opportunity or the headspace to work through this. So after like 5 months of just inactivity based on, having baby number 4, then I'm starting to dust that off and work through that. So I've been watching a few videos online. I follow a lot of different people, and I've downloaded some tools, and I'm starting to work through that. But I'm working on building an entire campaign that may run the breadth of level 1 to level 20. And it's going to be a throwback to classic Dungeons and Dragons. So it's going to be, not a lot of city commerce, travel, anything like that. It's going to be much more narrowed in its scope. And I've had a few other people who I've played with that don't play with me on Friday that have continued to express interest in wanting to play. So I need to be able to play test this stuff. So one of the things you guys may see on this channel in months to come is going to be some play testing of this campaign that I'm building. Because I want to see what are some of the things that the players run into, how do the mechanics work, and it's going to be interesting. I've got a pretty big idea for the end, because that's the section that I was working on, was the part of the campaign that would have taken players around level 13 to about level 16 or so, and then we were going to consolidate and all co-author the adventures that would have happened at 17, 18, 19, and level 20. They are in the process of sending me all their notes and what they already have. I'm going to try to find a way to make this work as one voice, and I'll still give them credit because they've done work. And who knows, maybe they'll be able to pick it up in a few months But at this point, I kind of need to continue with the momentum that I'm working on. So there's going to be an opportunity to have random players who want to play Dungeons and Dragons, who either have played for the last 20 years or this is their first time playing, play test material that has not been played before. That the only person who knows it in the room would be me, the DM, and the only viewer who might know would be my wife, because I will probably talk nonstop about it until she tells me to shut up. But that's how marriage works, folks. Life lesson. So, it's one of those things that I'm kind of looking forward to. I imagine there'll be about 4-hour-long sessions. They'll probably be able to be remote, in person, a variety of things. But that's something to look into. Yes, I have looked into publishing on DM's Guild. That was the route that we were going to go, but we were in the building phases, Gitchwish, of getting things together, of mapping out the story, because we wanted to be able to publish a bunch of micro dungeons that eventually would feed into a bigger story. That way we can get some playtest out of it and see how things go. The things that I will be running will be published on DM's Guild. And they'll be free, because I'm not in this to make a buck. I'm in this to kind of test the waters and bring my own flair to the game. So it's going to be interesting. But the table's going to be open to whomever. It might be one of those things that, if you want to play, you can enter into a drawing and we could have a bunch of people going. I really like a lot of the other things that I've seen online when it comes to this, different ways that people run groups like this. Cranium Mom 12 may know enough to DM now. So who knows? Maybe she'll guest DM one night. No, she won't. But if she wanted to, I'd take care of the kids for a few hours. But anyway, that's kind of one of the big projects that I'm working on, is building this massive campaign that will run from level 1 through level 20 with a bunch of customized characters, a bunch of customized NPCs, and we were toying with originally making this take place somewhere in Faerun, but we're not sure. I'm not sure now, because I'm learning more and more, and that kind of gets really difficult to do really quick, because then you find places that the history doesn't jive well, or something happened that doesn't seem to make sense. But that's kind of the big things that I'm working on right now. So in this little brief episode of about 30 minutes so far, I've talked about, some of the things I've had to do, some of the things I've got going on, and some of the things that I'm looking forward to. As always, you guys can ask me questions, and I will answer them. That's kind of what this whole thing's about. But I want to give you guys a little bit more time, and I don't mind talking. You can ask my wife; she'll tell you I don't mind talking. However, we could talk a little bit about some of the things that I can foresee upcoming for Harlequin's Requital, and I'll do my best not to give any spoilers. So, this is my third time running Horde of the Dragon Queen. It is an interesting adventure to run. There's a lot of things that seem to happen that just don't seem to make sense. That had I been more prepared prior if I were more as prepared as I am now when I first ran this, it probably would have been a lot better. I realized that there were some things that happened in the very first chapter that I got completely wrong, and it epically changed the story for chapter 2 and chapter 3. This time I'm paying a lot more attention to that. I'm actually looking at things that are, yes, I'm going to put Blue Alley and Horde of the Dragon Queen. It's going to happen. Castle Mac, the big one was there's a fight that's going to happen at some point while they're in Greenest. And I let the players deal with the fight, and I let the players win. And then I didn't realize that there was an alternative that was given for later on, but I didn't realize that what they had done was disrupted something later on. And it really seemed to spiral downhill from there. To be completely fair and open, when I was first introduced to Dungeons and Dragons for 5e, I was asked by my brother and some of his friends to be the DM because I had been a storyteller for Vampire the Masquerade when I was in high school, and I actually loved that entire gameplay. Didn't think that they were that different, but they definitely are. I said sure, and I picked up the starter set and I read it once, and I was thrown into running the DM every single week. And we got about 3/4 of the way through, and I was like, okay, cool. This seems kind of sandboxy. I've heard about this thing called Horde of the Dragon Queen. Let me just go ahead and do it. And so I bought Horde of the Dragon Queen, and a week later we started. I didn't do a lot of prep work because I was very used to running my own campaigns, and I did not know enough about Dungeons and Dragons at that point to do that. At least I didn't think so. I mean, if anybody wanted to run a Dungeons and Dragons game on their own, you could do it, and you could do it extremely well. I just really felt that I needed to know it a lot more to run it. So I was trying to run it as I'm reading it. I'm only a few pages ahead of where they were, and they were flying through it at a pretty good clip, faster than I was prepared for. And it just spiraled and spiraled and spiraled. And then the next time that I tried to run it, I got through Greenest, and then one of the players brought to me the Storm King's Thunder, and I was like, sure, let's go ahead and just morph over there. You shouldn't do that. It just doesn't. It makes it really difficult. So I ran into the same situation with Storm King's Thunder, but this time I've spent more time studying, more time looking into the things that have happened, and a little bit more time understanding how A affects B, and you might not see B until the next book. So it's a little bit better. I think I agree with you too, Castlemach. I love Horde of the Dragon Queen. I think that it's a really interesting story arc that has a lot of weight on the players themselves, but it's one of those things that it builds. It builds like a hot pepper. It builds over time, and it gets really interesting a little bit further on that it goes. So, I don't think that anybody should be scared of A, either playing Dungeons and Dragons, or B, trying to DM. I think that it's one of those things that every player should try to be a dungeon master. In fact, I guess it was years ago now, Josh, if you're still on, I think it was years. It seems like years. I did a game of roulette with the players, not Russian roulette, not that, but to where it was seat roulette. And what we did was we set a timer and we generated 4 new characters at the table. And we kept passing the sheets to the right or to the left or around or stuff like that. And each person had their own section that they would generate. And then we would set a timer for 2 years. Thank you, Josh. I think that's about right. And I think it was like 15 or 20 minutes, we would change seats to where you were the DM for 20 minutes and you had to pick up the story where it was. And, the DM would move to another seat and you would play a different player. And we went through, and it was interesting, but it was a chance for the players to get behind the screen and kind of bring their own flair to the game. And that's something that I probably will wind up doing again. I think that was a lot of fun. I'm not going to do it anytime soon. I want to get Horde of the Dragon Queen up and running. But it's something that if you are DM, I encourage you to consider. Because if you have, was it 3? Goodness. Okay, it was 3 years ago. But if you have players that want to give it a shot, it only works if they all want to do it, or at least want to try. It's a really cool experiment. It gives you a chance to be on the other side of the screen for your players. It gives them a chance to kind of think about what's going on. And it's just a throwaway campaign. I mean, it's a one shot that has no effect on anything that you're currently doing. It's a nice mental break. But, it is what it is. So that's just some of the things that I wound up doing that to alleviate myself from having to deal with Horde of the Dragon Queen at that point, because I knew nothing. I don't even think I knew what a beholder was. So, and that's kind of a thing to know. But it's very interesting, and I think that now that I know more, it's going to give me the opportunity to let the players enjoy Horde of the Dragon Queen. I think that it gets a lot of flack because it was the first thing that was released, but for 5e outside of the starter set. but I think that it's actually much better if you understand what you're trying to do. If you take the time and you read it all the way through and you think about it and you think ahead and you plan ahead, I think it's a lot of fun, not just as a DM, but I think it's a lot of fun for the players. But we'll see. We'll see over the next few months as Harlequin's Requital works the way through a rather epic story. So unless anybody has any other questions, I think that this is kind of where we're going to call for tonight. It's not really as much of a campaign diary as I would like, or as a recap, because we didn't have a game. So this is just a me. This is just a me getting a chance to talk to you, and you to talk to me, and to hear about some of the things that run through this gray matter up here. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and transition to the end, and I'm going to figure out if we can actually raid, because it looks like Castle Mac is still online, and that way, if you haven't followed them already, you definitely can, and help them get to that 1,000. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out tonight. I really do appreciate you guys hanging out. I look forward to seeing you on Friday, when hopefully our players will maybe get out of Greenest, and maybe it won't be on Flame anymore, and they can start going down the journey. There's a lot of really cool stuff coming up, not just for Horde of the Dragon Queen, but in general for the group. And I can't wait to see what happens to the party, how they react, and how you guys react. You guys in chat have been keeping it alive, and it's been awesome. So with that, I'll see you guys on Friday. Thank you so much for stopping by, and yeah, talk to you later.